Hi, and welcome to another episode of Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. Thanks so much for pressing play. This episode, we have Chris Holmes, who is the son of John Eric Holmes. John Eric Holmes is known for several things, but the two things that we probably would know him best for as fans of this show would be he was the author/editor of the first D&D Basic set in 1977, and he also did a lot of fiction writing, probably would be characterized as pulp fiction writing in the Edgar Rice Burroughs playground, and then also in Buck Rogers. But he's also a neurologist and all kinds of other cool things. And Chris keeps the torch alive for his father, championing his work and making sure that the legacy is known. And then also Chris does really cool stuff in his own right, including art and a very cool day job that involves D&D that we'll talk about on this episode. Some other things that you'll hear today is he's got a posthumous RPG project with his father coming out from Pacesetter Games called Things Better Left Alone. You'll definitely hear more about that. We also get into how much did John Eric Holmes make for creating the first D&D Basic Edition. I think you'll be surprised by the answer. Chris and Shane, that would be me, have different approaches to playing with alignment in RPGs. What's Chris's favorite D&D edition? And that's a trick answer. Also, we do talk about Edgar Rice Burroughs, and we talk about sending in the Pinkertons. That's a topic of interest in RPGs at the moment due to something Wizards of the Coast did. We talk about Tarzan's superpower. Yes, Chris makes the case that Tarzan had one of the first superpowers. We also talk about Weresharks, Ask Cthulhu, zombie movies, Rob Zombie, Dragula, and Sherlock Holmes, and much, much more. Don't forget our previous episode, we had returning friend of the show, Neil Halford, talks about the Betrayal at Krondor 30th anniversary, very well-known, beloved fantasy CRPG based on Raymond E. Feist's Krondor books. And there's also a fan film challenge related to that, so make sure to check that out. All right, so without any further ado, let's get on with this episode. On with the show.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky all up in your podcasts. It's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, I have a very cool guest. This guest has the patience of a saint. We've been talking probably about a year, if not longer, about having him on, and he has rolled with the punches, and I appreciate it very much. But I'm just really pleased to finally have Chris Holmes on, who I've gotten to know Chris through North Texas RPG Con, but he's got his feet are very firmly into the D&D world, RPG world. And he's got some really cool stuff to share. So, Chris Holmes, welcome to Shane Plays.
Thank you very much, Shane. Well, since we first talked about having me on the show, I now have two things to promote instead of one. So,
yeah, it's exciting.
Works out pretty well.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way, because I think a lot of times when people talk to you, one of their main points of interest is the fact of who your father is. And that is interesting to me. Yeah. Oh, really? Shocker. And that is interesting to me. But I think also you're doing some very interesting stuff in your own right. So I want to talk about that as well. But let's just go ahead and address, educate the audience, if they don't already know, that your father is John Eric Holmes, J. Eric Holmes. He went by different names. Who did the Holmes Basic D&D set in 1977, but was also did a lot of fiction writing, pulp writing, and that sort of thing. And, the more I've researched your father, very interesting guy, was a neurosurgeon and a Marine. So, did a lot. But,
actually,
to
a neurologist. He didn't actually do the surgery.
okay.
Yeah, so he could prescribe to you, but he would not open your brain as far as I know.
But he didn't actually go in and touch the brain. Okay, well, still, that's pretty fascinating. So,
unless you were dead, then he might touch your brain.
he might touch your brain. He might play with your tissue. And he actually, I was looking, he wrote nonfiction articles for Analog, like something about tapeworms. And he had all these nonfiction neurology related articles for Analog and other magazines. So, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is that it's a project that you're sort of doing posthumously, a joint project with your father, that there is a module that Pacesetter Games, Bill Barsh, Ben Barsh, those guys are going to drop starting June 1st. In fact, I think it's going to be available at North Texas RPG Con and then by their website and whatever, et cetera. But it is a module based on some maps that your father drew. And then also you're contributing some art.
That's right. It's based on my father's
exciting.
First dungeon. So there will be Weresharks, and Dagon may appear and kill you at the end. And it's called
Dagon and Weresharks.
Things Better Left Alone. And I saw the cover. Oh, the title is something from the sample dungeon in Holmes Basic. It may have been something my father actually quoted from Lovecraft. I'm not sure.
That sounds like a Lovecraft thing. Yeah. Like the Lovecraft could be summed up. The Lovecraft anthology could be "Don't poke it. Things better left alone. Don't poke it. Please don't poke it." Yeah. Well, I found a wonderful picture from one of the early, I think it was Gen Cons, where there was some kind of banquet where it was like Tim Kask, your father, your mom, and you. It's like an old black and white, or not black and white, but an old photo, and you're just smiling big. I think it was in Tim Kask.
He was making us
very
laugh.
early. Yeah. So you guys were that's wonderful. So you've gotten to see a side of D&D and TSR history that a lot of us didn't have, and it could be argued, and I think it could be argued successfully, that your father was a major part of the process that brought D&D to the mainstream.
I don't know about major, but sure, he was there.
Yeah, he was there. I mean, he was a major league. Well, he was, he did it could be, and I read people speculating on this, and I agree with them that Holmes Basic D&D set was the first sort of mainstream D&D product. You can argue what mainstream is, but it went to retailers, right? So
it was much more accessible than the 3-tone booklets, I would say. It had a really nice looking box with a pretty dragon on the cover by Sutherland, and I think my dad's writing style helped, particularly people who hadn't played war games before, understand what they were reading, so they didn't have to be initiated.
So I'm looking at of course, you have a lot of people think that the first basic set was the Moldvay, which was like 1981 or something like that. The actual first basic set of D&D was 1977. And it's got a dragon on the front setting on I think there's a couple of different versions of the cover art. One of them is kind of blue tinged. And I think some later...
Well, the booklet inside is blue tinged.
Oh, the booklet's blue tinged, but the box was always color.
Yeah, okay. The box was full color. So it's called the blue book because most people, their box got disintegrated before anything else. So then they just carried the blue booklet with them. They still have the book. Sometimes that disintegrated too.
Right. And then, so the cover was, the box was color. The booklet inside was a blue tinged cover. dragon setting on a pile of gold with some adventurers confronting the dragon. And this is also why there is an OSR retro clone of this version of D&D called Blue Home. That's literally the name of it in honor of both Holmes and I guess the color of the booklet. And then on the very first page, there's a very nice, I like this. I love this. It says, for Jeff and Chris. So we know who Chris is. Who is Jeff?
So Jeff is my older brother, and he was the one who introduced my father and I to Dungeons and Dragons. So his high school friends at the alternative school in Santa Monica were playing it. And so when he learned about it, he was like, oh, my dad's going to love this. So these high schoolers taught Dad and I how to play. And they thought we were all going to die, perhaps. So they made us roll up 3 characters. And we played and none of us died. But I stuck with those 3 characters for years afterwards. The third one always died. He was like the drummer.
Yeah, right. He was the drummer for
Boinger and Zareth, the Hobbit and the elf, survived and became literary characters, actually.
Oh, so Boinger and Zareth were your characters?
They were, yeah. So I'm a co-creator to some extent.
All right. Yeah, if people research your father's fiction writing, there's a whole series of short stories and one novel, I think called The Maze of Peril, featuring Boinger the Halfling and his companion Zareth. Was she an elf?
He's he's sort of a non-sexual male elf, yeah.
Okay, so Zareth...
Boinger is very heterosexual. Zareth is still... we still don't know about Zareth. We have to write some more stories about him.
Zareth is still exploring. Okay, so... so anyway, yeah, so and then it says rules for fantastic medieval role-playing adventure game campaigns. So... but to bring it back to because I did want to make sure to talk about this since it's relevant and timely. In the Holmes Basic set, there is a sample dungeon, or there's some starting on page 40. There's a sample dungeon and a couple of sample maps to go along with this dungeon, or at least one. I thought there was more than one. Let me look. I thought, yeah, there is. There's sort of a cross section on page 38, and then on page
I think Tom Wham drew that cross section.
Okay,
pretty cool.
According to Bill Barsh, in a Facebook post, let me see if I have that pulled up. All right, so this is from Bill Barsh on April 20th. He said, "Today, I moved my workstation to the kitchen table to celebrate. The manuscript for the J. Eric Holmes dungeon is complete. If you missed the previous post on the subject, I'll refresh quickly. Chris Holmes, son of John Eric Holmes, approached Pacesetter Games with the opportunity to take an original pencil-drawn map from his father and create an actual adventure module." So Bill says it couldn't reply fast enough. So y'all been working together on this. They've written encounters to go along with this this map that your father drew. And on June 1st, there is a adventure dropping called Things Better Left Alone, which you've already touched on, and that's even in the old Holmes Basic set. Your father, I think, even calls it Things Better Left Alone. So, which is a great name. Don't poke it, but adventurers being adventurers, they're going to poke it. So let me see. Here's some other stuff that Bill sent me. I reached out to him about it. He said there's 113 keyed encounters, read aloud player text in all, maps based on the Maze of Peril book, which is Maze of Peril is an actual novel featuring your characters, Boinger and his male elf companion. We added about 15 to 20 new monsters and 10 new magic items. So this drops June 1st. If people are at North Texas, evidently you can pick it up from Pace Setter Games at North Texas. It'll also be available via their website. Sounds really cool. I'm definitely going to pick up a copy. So this is a previous map that your father drew, but was never fully fleshed out. So now Pace Setter Games has fleshed it out with encounters and whatnot, and you're contributing art.
That's right. I have to finish drawing a Wereshark this weekend.
The Wereshark. So does the does the Wereshark knock on doors and claim to be a dolphin? And then if you open the door, he eats you?
It could be. The thing about Weresharks that was really important at the time I first encountered them was that we thought they were normal sharks, and then they climbed out of the water to kill us. We thought we were safe on the beach, but we were not. And my big dwarf, who was my third character, was the first victim of a wereshark ever.
And what was his name, so we can memorialize him?
Bardan. Poor Bardan. He shows up in the novel too, briefly.
So
if
you get bit by a wereshark and survive, do you turn into a wereshark?
I would assume so. Yeah. My dad never
but
wrote
at high
actual...
tide.
Yeah. So there's different stats for them. Gary Gygax appropriated them in the Monster Manual too, but other people have written different stats for them. My dad never really wrote out the rules for them. He just he wrote a short little snippet of an adventure for Alarms and Excursions, and that is where I believe Gary Gygax read about them the first time. But they're now in Maze of Peril, and they're now in this module as well.
So how long, I mean, are they like a land shark? Can they run around on land indefinitely?
I think so. But they're monsters, Shane, so you can have them do whatever you like. Some people actually play them as a character class, which I don't know if I approve of, but they're weird
players
creatures.
Will be players.
Yes.
Players will play anything. So here's the most important thing about a wereshark. I have to know. Mm-hmm. Does it thirst for human blood?
I think so, yeah. He did... my father did grow up in Hawaii, and he did hear some Hawaiian folk tales and stuff when he was a kid or a teenager. So he did sort of appropriate them from a native source in a sense. There is a shark man in Hawaiian folklore, which is kind of cool, I think.
That is pretty cool. So we've got Things Better Left Alone, AKA Don't Poke It. That's what I'm calling it. That's not the official name. Things Better Left Alone is the official name, drops June 1st, and there may be, if you're lucky, a wereshark. So tell us about the art that you're doing and tell us about your art in general. Because like I said, we're not just talking about your father. Tell us what you get up to.
Well, I do have a day job, but I like to draw monsters, and I've been doing it since I was a teenager. And I had my first drawing printed in the illustrating a Boinger and Zirith story, Troll's Head. But I was always a little late to the Dungeons and Dragons party with my art. So I had a couple of successes early, and then a couple of rejections or being ignored, and I kind of gave up on it for many years. But when Alan approached me to do a collection of Dad's stories, I said, "Yeah, let's do it," and I'd like to draw an illustration for each one of the stories as well. And he said, "Yeah, do that." So I picked up my pen again at the age of 50-something, and now I'm doing drawings for lots of different people, and I'm at the point where I have to start charging for everything. So I think the last drawing I did for free was for Levi.
Levi Combs of Planet X Games.
Yeah.
Did you do?
Well, he said I could draw any monster. Yeah, I did a drawing for a zine. He said I could draw any monster I wanted, and he would write, a little description of it, and turn it into a playable monster. So that was an offer I could not refuse.
Yeah, what did you draw?
Something from my childhood. It's called a lobarilla. It's part gorilla, part lobster.
I'm there. I'm there for that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. That's in one of the phylacteries.
I love it. So, and you mentioned Alan earlier. I'm assuming that's Alan Grohe of Black Blade Publishing. Yeah, who you've done some work with. Yeah, and he published the collection of your father's works. So, well, that's fantastic, man. That not only are you drawing, pursuing a love, but making money for it. Nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. So, are there any other people you're working with right now, or projects that you want to mention that you're involved with?
Well, the old news, I guess, now is that my father's Pellucidar novel, his sequel to Edgar Rice Burroughs' Pellucidar series, Mahars of Pellucidar, has been re-released by Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, and they've also released Red Axe of Pellucidar, which was never printed before officially, in lovely editions with a little drawing by Chris Holmes on inside.
Oh, that's great. Now, Pellucidar, that's the inner world of Mars, right? That's like the hollow Earth of Mars, or am I?
It's the hollow Earth of Earth.
Oh, so I thought it was on Mars. Okay.
No, it's on Earth. It's based on some crazy writings of Madame Blavatsky, a theosophist, and also Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. But it has there's a sun inside of our Earth, and then there's a hollow world on the inside full of dinosaurs and intelligent reptiles. And Tarzan visited.
That kind of thing pops up a lot. Oh, Tarzan visited. Well, of course he did.
Yeah, that was the first crossover novel ever written, was Tarzan at the Earth's core.
Did Burroughs write that?
Yeah. Burroughs wrote 80 Tarzan books and 7 Pellucidar books, and maybe he wanted to give his Pellucidar series a little bump or something. So
he had Tarzan.
So Tarzan, Tarzan gets into a dirigible, and they fly through the polar opening, and they encounter snake people or lizard people, and it's a great book, Tarzan at the Earth's Core.
Yeah, I read a couple of years ago. I think I got it from Trollord Games. They issue some Tarzan books, some older. They do reissues of stuff, but I read Tarzan for the first time, and it was way different than what, as often happens when your understanding of a character is based on movie adaptations, and then you actually read the book. It's quite different. So, Tarzan's a different character by the end of it, he's wearing suits and running around speaking French and stuff, taking his revenge on people in Europe. So, anyway.
He does wear suits in the Tarzan novels occasionally, but he loves ripping them off and being naked too. So
of course he does, because he's the primal virile man. So, yes. And then I've got a buddy, Michael Tierney, who works with the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. Is it a foundation? I can't remember the
corporation. I think.
They're
very nice people.
Yeah, well, he works with them, and he's done the chronology of artwork related to Edgar Rice Burroughs, but he also got to finish one of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan stories that was unfinished. It was called Tarzan and the Mysterious She. And I guess it was a short story or maybe a novella that ERB never finished. So with the approval of the foundation, he finished it, and that was published in Cursova magazine, which Cursova is an advertising partner of Shame Plays. See how I worked all that in? Kursova Magazine. Cirsova, Kursova Magazine. So anyway, so you got to do some illustrations for the reissues. You got to do some illustrations for the Black Blade Publishing collection of your father's work. You did some stuff for Levi Combs. Anything else you want to mention?
I don't know. I'm probably going to pitch a few things at the next convention, but no, nothing solid yet. But I made a lot of great friends there. So thanks again to Alan.
In North Texas?
Yes. Yeah. But if you want to poke Alan and Black Blade Publishing, and because Tales of Peril is out of print, so why don't they print some more?
Yeah, I think we should form a picket line at the Black Blade Publishing booth at North Texas, and we can we'll have a sign, Black Blade Unfair, all that, and we'll just march back and forth. Poor Alan. He's like the nicest guy in the world. So
he's close, son, yeah.
I blew his son Henry up in a game last year. So I was running Middle Earth role playing, and he crawled down a tunnel that was full of black powder, and it blew up. So, but he seemed kind of happy that that's how things ended. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's fun to die in a convention game.
Yeah, exactly right. Especially if it's spectacular. You're like, this was a big eruption of black powder. Yeah, so things went boom. Yeah, so I think everybody was happy all around. Well, that's great, man. I like to draw too. I never really thought I had any artistic ability. And then about 4 years ago, I started doing Inktober. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's so I do Inktober during October, and then I do the Inktober 52, where you do one a week all year round, and it's fun to watch my drawing improve. I've actually drawn stuff, and I'm like, I did that, so which is nice.
Oh, that's great. I've been drawing for over 50 years. I've been drawing for over 50 years, and I haven't seen much improvement yet, but I'm getting faster. No,
yeah,
like I showed
that's
you,
improvement.
If you look at what I did when I was, 16, my first drawing, you go, wow, that guy's really talented. And then you look at what I just did and you go, wow, that's the same guy. He's still a teenager. He's still drawing tiny little hatch marks.
But you did it much faster. So who is...
Yeah, a little faster.
I'm on... Yeah. All right, so you have a website, holmeswest.com.
Oh, yeah, I do.
In the show notes. Yeah, and you have some art up on your website. Who is it? Snoggy the snail? Shoggy snail?
I don't think we need to promote that. I was out of town and my wife just started taking pictures of my art sort of randomly. So yes, sure. Let's call him Snoggy the snail. Yeah,
I love that you have artwork of kaiju. You've got like Hedorah versus Gamera versus Mothra. That's cool.
Yeah, that was a painting I did for my wife.
Oh, is she a kaiju fan?
Yeah, she's a Mothra fan, yeah.
Yeah, Mothra. I'm a big kaiju, and I like Mothra too. Every time Mothra shows up on screen, I have to sing the Mothra song. You've got an interesting range of art, because some of your stuff is like OSR kind of gritty, old school sort of, but then some of it is like almost cartoony and whimsical. So you've got a pretty wide range. Yeah, you've got a very wide range here. So, and it looks like, do you do some sculpting? It looks like maybe you did some stuff with clay, or I see a picture of some stuff here on it. Yeah.
Well, I got from Dungeons and Dragons, I got into theater, and from theater I got into mask making, and from mask making I got into puppet making briefly, and then I got into painting theater, and then I got into designing scenery for theater. But I have at various times made props for plays and things. So, like I made a Jabberwocky head for Alice Through the Looking Glass. So that might have been the sculpture thing you saw. It might have been my Jabberwocky head. I'm really good at fake food.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, that's important for plays, right? I mean, you gotta have food.
Sometimes.
So every time you touch the Jabberwock head or Jabberwocky head, do you say Snicker Snack?
Well, it's really high in the corner of my room, so I don't. Actually, its teeth are very vulnerable now. Whatever plastic I made them with is sort of decayed, so I can't really touch it as much as I would like.
So its teeth are decaying, so it's had too many Snicker Snacks?
Yeah, I guess so.
You guess so? All right, but I'm dumb. All right. So you were talking about earlier that you had a day job, and we were talking before we started recording that your hobby, your love of role-playing games intersects sometimes with your day job. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I work with teenagers at the Boys and Girls Club, and part of my job is being a dungeon master. Actually, today I get to go be a player because my high school group, they're actually, each of them has created their own version of Dungeons and Dragons. So they're taking turns running the game, and I'm just a player, and I tell them not to use bad language and not to bully each other. But basically, I'm just playing Dungeons and Dragons and getting paid a little bit for it. I also play chess and
you're living the dream.
Pool and Cosmic Encounter and other games. And I do teach a little bit of art.
That's all around just super cool. Would you say that, so the teenagers that you're playing D&D with, or even chess or whatever, do they, I mean, are they kids that you would say, I don't normally think they'd be into D&D, but then once they start playing it, they enjoy it? Or do you get kids gravitating that you think would normally be interested in D&D anyway? How does that kind of work?
Some of them actually have played 5th edition already, and others have just heard about it. So, no, I don't ever force anyone to play Dungeons and Dragons. So I just try to seem like fun, and maybe I tempt them by giving them their own little bag of dice. That might, but
they might like that.
Mm-hmm. So that's usually a good.
So if you kill one of their characters, do they try to get you fired?
It took me like 2 years before I actually killed a character.
Okay.
Because I give them lots of opportunities to think better of their choices, but yeah.
Right.
We brought him back to life eventually.
All right. So do you try to work in, like, because your job is to work with teenagers at the Boys and Girls Club, mm-hmm. right? So do you try to work in like life lessons, or do you just let the game be the game?
Well, I do in a sense that moral questions do occur, and I don't actually play with alignment, so I allow each sort of a moral situation to work itself out. And if you happen to be a cleric or a paladin, then God may take an interest in what's going on. But sometimes just I try to put social pressure on you not to kill each other off. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But we always have a good time. So that's interesting. Since you brought up alignment, I'm going to push in a little bit there because that, alignment, I in fact, if I remember right, your father's alignment system is a little bit different. If I remember, like a 5-point alignment system, if I remember right, I'd have to go refresh myself. That's all right. But what do you like? Do you not play with alignment at Boys and Girls Club just because you don't want to get into all that, or do you personally just prefer to dispense with alignment in general in your games, or is it just the Boys and Girls Club? No, it's just not on the character sheets of any game I ever play. I don't. Okay. I think it's unnecessary. But I mean, if you are a cleric or if you're a samurai or whatever, you have a code and you should follow it. Yeah. But the rest of us, we have to just sort of fumble along. You kill someone who's trying to kill you, but you have to decide. Right. Should I kill this monster? Yeah, it's a monster. Let's take its treasure. But should I kill this child who's picking my pocket? I don't know. Yeah, probably not. Maybe just cut his hand off. No, I'm joking. That's right. Teach him a lesson. Teach that.
wacky kid a lesson. I find the alignment, and I won't spend too much time on this, but I find the alignment discussion interesting because on one side, you can say, hey, you don't want to force morality or the lack thereof in a game, codify it. Okay, fair enough. Let the players' actions determine what alignment they are. On the other hand, it's interesting to me, not in the real world, obviously, but in a fantasy world, right? That could have a completely different origin, creation, whatever, than the real world. That the idea of good and evil and neutrality even could actually be part of the cosmological forces that underlie the entire foundation of reality. So I don't necessarily have a problem with alignment in a game, like, because you could literally have a fantasy universe where good and evil are forces like gravity, right? They're just baked in. But I also have no problem with people dispensing with alignment. And saying, it's just not
sort of how you feel about gods in your
right.
universe too. Whether are they fighting each other? Are they trying to win over converts or whatever? Or I usually don't have gods in my game unless the player wants to have a god. Then I say,
right.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your god or whatever. Generally, they want to have a Christian god, so I just let them sort of dictate how they're going to deal with that. And
so let me drill in on that. When you say a Christian god, like they want their god in the game to actually be like God, like Jehovah, or?
Well, they don't talk about it, but they're like, they just, they say, can I ask God for advice?
Okay. So they just say God. Okay. All right. Yeah. So they're not necessarily, they're just saying God in the general sense of how modern Western society would say God, I guess. That's interesting. I've never had a player do that.
I mean, every player does it differently. A lot of people like myself, I don't really want to play a cleric. It doesn't seem like fun to me. I want to play a thief or some other cool, pointy-eared character. But so if my player wants to ask God for help, I have them roll 3d6, and if they roll under their wisdom, then maybe God will listen to their prayer or listen to their question.
Well, that's interesting.
And then sometimes if they do something really bad, I sometimes say, do you think God wants you to do that? And then that usually makes them think twice.
Well, that's kind of where and I'll wrap up the alignment discussion because that's easy to rabbit hole on this. But I think that I think a lot of it comes down to if a player is like, I want to be like a paladin or a cleric and I want to follow a deity that has these strictures, then I'll hold them to it. But I don't it, I don't force it on them. Like I've had players that say, I'm, chaotic good and I follow this deity or I'm neutral good or whatever. And then they tell me what it's all about. And then they proceed to play completely opposite of that. I'm like, okay, they start having in-game consequences. Like suddenly they're getting disadvantaged a lot, or they're having bad dreams that they can't remember. They just feel out of sorts. Something's not right. Something's off, But I don't come out and say it's because you declared yourself this and you've been doing this repeatedly,
Mm-hmm. You let them.
So that's kind of how I handle it. Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, you told me you wanted to play this way. So, and another thing on alignment, and this is the last thing I'll say, I never play evil characters. I don't play in evil parties, but it's fascinating to me to watch movies or read stories or whatever, where like basically everybody's evil. And how do they make that work? Like what's their common interest or their common rules to keep them from turning on each other? I think that's very interesting. Like a law.
Yeah, I don't think it would work.
Yeah. Not forever, but if you have a short-term common goal. So, that they all have shared interest in reaching or whatever. So, well, I think that's super cool that you do the stuff at the Boys and Girls Club, and not just D&D. I mean, playing chess and pool and all that. It just being involved, so important, man. Mm-hmm. So that's super groovy.
And being away from your phone.
Yeah,
because that's important. We don't take away their phones when they're teenagers. We try to entice them to interact in any other way.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because, like I've got a niece who, like, she's in high school and she basically dated a guy for like 2 years, hardly ever saw him. All the dating was happening by like text message. So they have, and I notice a lot of kids these days aren't as fired up to get a driver's license. Like when I was in high school, true. Like you turned 16, you wanted that driver's license. And I've noticed a trend here lately that kids are less interested in getting that driver's because they can stay in touch with their friends on their phone. So I've noticed that's something I've noticed anyway. So, but that's a whole different conversation. I'm gonna steer it back to D&D. So, do you play any role playing games besides D&D?
At conventions, yeah. Whenever I can.
Yeah, actually, I can answer my own question. I know that you like TechML, like I like TechML, right? We're both TechML heads. So
yes,
yeah.
Hey, you know what Jeff D told me once?
What's that?
That Empire of the Petal Throne and the planet Tecumel was inspired by Barsoom, the creation of Edgar Rice Burroughs, because Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars is a planet inhabited by multi-limbed, monstrous creatures with a sense of honor. And a lot of very attractive people who don't wear a lot of clothing, and
I can see
Tecumel. That. Yeah.
The thing with Tecumel, though, it has so many different influences. I mean, I can definitely see that.
It's got some very interesting influences.
Yeah, it's the deeper I dig into Tecumel, Empire of the Petal Throne, etc. It's just fascinating to me. I play the games. I've read a couple of the books, reading. It's just rich. And, I've brought this point up with Victor Raymond and who's on the Tecumel Foundation and a couple other people. It's fascinating to me because Tolkien developed Middle Earth on an incredible level. And then, Professor Barker developed Tecumel on an incredible level, and they're both linguists. So it always makes me wonder, is there something about studying linguistics that leads to a style of thinking that leads to incredibly rich world building? But hopefully, I know I'm in a game with Victor at North Texas, so I hope we're in the same one. There's nothing I love more than to be creeped out and or die horribly in a Victor Raymond game of Tecumel. So,
I survived actually mine.
Yeah, well, I survived the last one that we were in when that creepy little girl was like, we didn't know if she was undead or not. I think that's the last game I've played in. No, I think I know the compound got like attacked at the end, but anyway, I digress. Hopefully we're in the same game. And the Tecumel miniatures is a lot of fun too. Yeah, Rob Smith and company run really good Tecumel miniatures wargaming at North Texas as well.
Maybe the first or second Gen Con my dad and I went to, we couldn't get in, but we watched M.A.R. Barker run Empire of the Petal Throne. And we just stood there and he was the best dungeon master I've ever seen. So immersive and so gleefully enjoyed making things difficult for his players. But fascinating man.
Yeah, there was he ran a Tuesday and a Thursday night game. They were different games, different campaigns, but he played every Tuesday and every Thursday with people at his college. And that's how Victor Raymond got to know him. And I've talked to 2 or 3 people that were actually in his games, and said they were just, amazing. So anyway, and I was going to say, just to give a shout out to Jeff D., who, of course, Villains and Vigilantes, famous for his old school Dungeons and Dragons art. He's a huge Tecumseh fan, and he's got Baythorm, the Plane of Tecumseh RPG. So there's a lot of different RPG systems that play in Tecumseh. There's a lot. So if you're interested in checking it out, I recommend it. I've got a couple of podcasts out there where I've tried to do kind of a deep dive into what it's all about, and it's fascinating stuff. So, but I'm sure I'll see you at North Texas, but hopefully we'll get to play together again. So,
yeah, I think so.
I want to get into a little bit more. I know you said you were bringing your father's bibliography and everything. Before we kind of move over into that, is there anything else that you kind of wanted to share about, what you're currently doing or hoping to do, or just anything Chris Holmes? Like I said, we're not just here to talk about your dad.
I'm done with me.
Okay.
I haven't talked about myself this much in a long time.
And you're like, wow, I'm done.
I have a short biography of Edgar Rice Burroughs here.
Okay, well, hold on. I definitely want to get into that. First, I want to recommend, again, people go to holmeswest.com. I'll have the links in the show notes. Folks, go to shaneplays.com, and I'll have the show notes up with links and stuff to topics we're talking about today. But Chris does have a website up. He's got his art. He's got some stuff about his dad.
I have my dad's book collection, which you could, if you want to try to buy one of my dad's books, you can check out what I'm asking for them.
Okay. And there is a books of John Eric Holmes. And then also, and this is very important, this is probably one of the most important things on the internet. Ask Cthulhu. So you can submit a question to Cthulhu, and Cthulhu will answer you. And the example is Archie Andrews sent in a question, said he can't decide between Betty and Veronica, and was asking Cthulhu what to do. And Cthulhu answers. So you can submit a question to Cthulhu, and Cthulhu will answer on the Cthulhu ? Section of Holmes West. So go check that out.
But you may lose sanity.
You will lose sanity. I've already lost sanity just by pulling it up. Yeah. So it says, if you submit a question, it may show up on this website. You are okay with this? Yes. If your answer is no, then do not submit a question. But then the question will gnaw at your mind until you finally go insane and then fall victim to a small rodent with a human face going by the name Brown Jenkins. So yeah, you're screwed either way. So yeah, folks, go check that out. All right. So tell us a little bit about Edgar Rice Burroughs and your father's work in the ERB universe.
Okay. So Edgar Rice Burroughs, he's old. He was born in 1912.
What a way to start the biography. I'm riveted.
He's probably, in his lifetime, he's probably the most successful writer on Earth during his lifetime, and certainly the most prolific. And so he wrote 27 Tarzan books, 11 Barsoom books, 7 Pellucidar books, and then another probably 60 novels of various types. Anyway, so that's just crazy. And his stuff has influenced most of our major pulp writers. Almost everybody likes him except for Tolkien and Lovecraft. They're the only two writers I could find who did not like Edgar Rice Burroughs. But
interesting.
Fritz Leiber and Philip Jose Farmer liked him so much that they wrote prequels or sequels to Tarzan's, what's it called? Opar series, which is a lost world where people ride around on triceratopses, I think.
Which is important.
And he also,
Let's just highlight that. That's important.
Burroughs was also probably a very big influence on Robert E. Howard. So there's a lot of things in common between Tarzan and Conan. And My father was lucky enough to meet Edgar Rice Burroughs when my father was a 12-year-old boy in Hawaii, and Burroughs was staying at the one big hotel that was there at the time in Honolulu. So my father got Burroughs' signature and sort of got inspired to think about writing in the Burroughs universe. So that's Edgar Rice Burroughs in a nutshell. I'm just warning you that you may encounter a little bit of racism in some of his books, particularly the Tarzan books. But most of it I didn't notice when I was having them read aloud to me as a child, and it didn't turn me into a racist. So,
yeah, of course, there's we talk about stuff being of its times. Lovecraft catches heat. A lot of the pulp writers catch heat. So you're going to run into it. Like one of the things that, we were talking about before we started recording, you went on the Appendix N Book Club podcast, and that's a great podcast. They really do a good deep dive on pulp books. But they always spend quite a bit of time talking about, this element of the book today people would have problems with. So just go in with your eyes open. It's not like you said, they're not like racist handbooks. They're not like trying to turn you into a racist. So do you have a personal favorite Edgar Rice Burroughs short story or book?
Oh, I would recommend Princess of Mars, At the Earth's Core, which is the first Pellucidar novel. Chessmen of Mars is one of my favorites. It has a monster race in it that is really weird and very interesting. And Tarzan at the Earth's Core is a great, fun book.
I love that. I love the crossover.
Yeah, it is probably the first crossover ever created. And Tarzan may have been the first superhero ever created because he's
definitely a proto superhero.
Yeah. Well, he has a superpower. He has super smell, which makes no sense. And this is very Burroughsy to have your character have no rationale for something that they can do that's very useful to them. So he can smell Jane, his wife, anywhere she's kidnapped, anywhere on the world. He can follow her scent trail, and he can also tell things about you depending on how your sweat smells, like whether you're lying or whether you're hiding.
That is super smell.
He can smell you through a wall.
Okay, that's a superpower. I'm sold. I just dropped the gavel. Sold. That was one of the first superpowers.
Right. Oh, John Carter can jump around like a superhero, but that's because he's an Earthman on Mars, and there's less
on Mars with different gravity.
But he is the greatest swordsman in two worlds, so he's got that going for him too.
Well, I would argue that Tarzan has another superpower of super intelligence, because in the first Tarzan book, he completely learns not just English, but amazingly by just looking at like one, like by reading a diary or something, and his brain, the longer he looks at it, suddenly he understands English, and then he understands English enough that he's running around Europe. So,
yeah, he does do that.
So I'm going to give him super linguistics too.
Well, all of Burroughs' characters actually are great at learning languages. They can learn a language in a chapter quite quickly.
You have to, right?
Yeah.
Your father wrote the official sequel to the first Buck Rogers novel, and I think it was called Mordred. Is that right? Let me look here.
That's what they sold it as. Yeah, that's the one I want you. Save your money on that one is my recommendation. Spend your money
not a fan?
on. I say spend your money on Mahars of Pellucidar and Red X of Pellucidar. Yeah, he wasn't as happy because they edited his version of it, and then didn't ask him what he thought of their editing. They just printed it, so it was not a not a great experience for him.
So he wasn't pleased when he saw the changes.
Yeah. He actually had some difficulty getting Mahars printed. It wasn't they initially rejected it, and then he pointed out to them that they had just printed a Fritz Leiber, so they were printing sequels to Burroughs' work, although they told him they weren't. And then somebody else...
see right here you are.
Yeah. And then somebody else at the... I think Burroughs' grandson, Hulbert, read my dad's manuscript and said, "This is really good. We should print it." So thanks to him, Mahar's was printed.
All right. So you have Mahar's of... Is it Pellucidar or Pellucidar? I want to make sure I'm saying it right.
Pellucidar, yeah. It's a...
Pellucidar. Okay, so it's a soft C.
C.
And you have the
yeah.
Soft in the key of soft. Red Axe of Pellucidar, which originally he wrote, they accepted it, but then didn't publish it. But then it got republished fairly recently, or published for the first time, or something along those lines. Is that right?
No, they did. They did not publish it. Some bootleg copies snuck out, but the family member, or the person who is in charge of Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, changes over time. So the guy who printed Mahar's was no longer in charge, and the person who took over didn't want to print Red Axe because Mahar's didn't sell very well. And I think Red Axe would have sold better, partly because nobody knows what a Mahar is. But
right.
And Red Axe is a good, catchy title, but yeah.
It really is, yeah. No, I can see that. But it did finally get, some years back, an official publication.
Last
correct?
Year. Yeah.
Last year. And then you have artwork in that. Okay.
I do.
So for Swordsman of Pellucidar, which I'm showing was unfinished, how far along is the book? Like, how much of the book exists?
What title.
State is it in? That's it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like you could... All right.
No, somebody can use that title if they want.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry about that one, folks.
Right. So your father was a neurologist. He was actually like a professor, I believe, or of neurology, I'm assuming. How did he end up...
he taught.
So how did your father end up approaching TSR and pitching the basic set? And was he ever actually a direct employee of TSR, or did he just do this on a freelance or contract basis? Like, what happened?
Well, he wrote them a letter because when we learned how to play Dungeons and Dragons, he felt like he didn't quite get a very good introduction, so he bought all the books and tried to figure it out on his own. And he still felt that it was really difficult and that somebody should write a beginner's guide to Dungeons and Dragons. So that was he wrote them a letter and said, would you? I'm a professor and I'm a pulp science fiction writer. Would you consider letting me write a beginner's guide? And I think they called him back. And anyway, they said, yeah, we were thinking about something like that. You can do that for us, but we can't pay you. We don't have any money, but we'll give you free. We'll give you free games. So will you do it for nothing? And he said, sure.
It's not funny. It's just the way you're presenting it is great. You're like, yeah, okay. Sure.
Pretty much. Well, he did have a day job, luckily, and my dad was kind of a rich kid, so he wasn't really used to asking for money. So,
right.
He made no money, and he was not an employee. He was honored at a dinner, but and he did get free games, but that's it.
So he got free games, not just free copies of his own basic set, but like free games from TSR in general.
Yeah, we got Awful Green Things from Outer Space, and we got Marvel superheroes, and it was cool.
That is cool.
But, so he could have got $1 million, but he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, after it became a somewhat successful product, you think that maybe something could have been worked out. But anyway, I from what it sounds like to me is your dad did it because he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of a love of the game, the product. So, and now, I mean, he's held in high regard among, enthusiasts and historians. You can't buy it. That's hard to buy. You know what I mean? To earn your place.
It certainly paid off for me, but I think he enjoyed the little bit of notoriety it got him. Yeah.
Right. So do you remember, because I do not, I remember BX when I was a little too young when the basic 77 basic set dropped to really remember it. Of course, I know about it in retrospect. Do you remember what kind of impact it had for players or in the hobby? What kind of feedback he was getting?
I had no idea, actually, because they didn't tell us anything. And we went to the convention, and it was kind of hard to tell, I mean, they were for sale. And my dad did say that they sold a lot of copies, but they had no reason to tell him how many copies they were selling. So
and they were sort of incentivized not to, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now this was also the edition or the box set that for a time, and I think the general urban myth or consensus or whatever it was because of a dice shortage. I've never verified that personally, but for a time, this box set didn't have dice in it. It came with little chits. Your randomizer weren't dice. They were little square pieces of cardboard with numbers on them, basically. So do you have any insight onto why that was?
No, I mean, I've heard the story, obviously, but the people who got the chits definitely got a raw deal there, since polyhedra were rare apparently, and you had to make your own. You had to make your own 20-sider by coloring every other face red or something, or writing. My dad wrote with a little tiny rapidograph pen, a 1 next to every other digit to make it a tens column.
Right. Yeah. They the 20-siders of the time, I think, had 0 to 9 repeated twice.
Yeah, that's right.
Another way to do it is. I found in recent years, one of the ways that people did it was they would roll like the 20-sider and a 6-sider at the same time. And then if the 6-sider came up odd, then I think it was a tens, and a ones. And if it came up even, then it was in the tens or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that was another way people had of doing it. But yeah, like some games would come with a little wax pencil, or, like a crayon or something. Yeah. To color in stuff. So, yeah. So do you personally, have a favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons? To just throw the spotlight on you, since your dad wrote one of them, I'm just going to put you under the gun. What's your favorite, Chris? I'm sure your dad's listening.
Well, they all have big problems. I can criticize them all.
I've never gotten that answer. No, I got to back up. That was beautiful, because people are always like, well, they all have strong points, but you're like, no, they've all got problems.
It's true, though, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe that's my personality.
Which one do you think has the least amount of problems?
I don't own any of them, so I can't really tell you. I have the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons books, and I have my dad's blue book, but I don't own Mulvey Cook or Menser, so I can't really say. My dad wrote a review of Mulvey Cook, and it was a very positive review. I think variable dice damage is something I really enjoy. I like arrows being 1 to 4, and I like, some weapons doing 1d8 damage. I enjoy that for some reason. It just feels right to me. So that's the one thing that Holmes Basic is missing. But.
Well, I think that, but he drew that because Holmes Basic was sort of a aggregated cleaned up, edited version of OD&D plus some of its supplements, right?
Yeah, he tried not to add anything of his own. He tried to be very faithful to the books, and also to chainmail. I guess he got a little bit of material from chainmail. And
so in the old days, Chris, can you hand me my Geritol? All weapons did 1d6, isn't that right? Isn't that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
and then
except
later they changed it up.
Yeah, we never played that way though, because we had a weird Caltech version of the rules that we were taught. So we just kept critical hits and we kept variable dice damage, and then added the basic D20 combat system.
Okay. All right. So yeah, even at the very, and this is a debate that goes on all the time, but even at the very beginning, before Holmes Basic was even written, everybody had their own house rules. Caltech had house rules. I had house. They had house. Everybody had a house rule, and different ways of doing it. So when you go to the Boys and Girls Club, are you running 5th edition? What are you running there?
Oh God, no. It's too much work. Okay, here's my metaphor for 5th edition. When I was a tourist and I go to another country, they'd have these restaurants that were tourist friendly. And so they'd have French food, English food, American food, Japanese food, Chinese food. They'd have all the stuff on your menu, and your menu would be just telephone book size. And then, so you'd waste all this time making all these choices, and then in the end you'd be confused and you wouldn't remember. It wasn't worth it. And that's 5th edition. It's just too many choices, and they're not worth the trouble.
So what are you running then? Or you're just running your own version of like an old basic?
So for the middle school kids who are first playing, I run Chris Holmes's weird version of Holmes Basic, and for the high school kids, I run Chris Holmes' weird version of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But occasionally a kid will come along and say, I want to run 5th edition. And I'll go, okay, I can't stop you. I'm supposed to support you. So I put up with it. And I do like the advantage disadvantage mechanic. Just
the advantage disadvantage mechanic is a very nice, elegant mechanic.
Yes.
I mean, I listen. People, it's a very nice, elegant mechanic. I can't argue against it at all. I actually run for my group, my weekly group. We run 5e because I started running in 2015 DMing at a local game store that needed DMs. So I was running 5e for the store to help the store sell stuff, and then the store ended up closing during COVID, so we moved it here to the house, and we've just stayed on 5e. But I've already
if it brings you joy, then I'm happy for you.
Yeah,
I'm happy
fine.
for you, Shane, if you enjoy it.
You support my choices no matter how terrible they are.
Sure.
But I've already decided, our group's already decided, I'm not jumping onto whatever the next thing from Wizards of the Coast is, whatever D&D Next or 1 or D&D 6, whatever they're calling it, we're done. There's too many other systems out there I want to play. So, and they're waiting for better or for worse. I am not opining. I'm simply saying that there's too much culture war in my gaming. And I just want to play games. So, Anyway,
and play a half elf if you want to.
If you want to, by goodness.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that's just the latest controversy. And then again, poor Wizards of the Coast. Well, not poor Wizards of the Coast, but their corporation making their own decisions. So they're having crisis after crisis. I'm sure you saw where Wizards of the Coast just sent Pinkerton agents to this guy's house, right?
I just saw that today. Yeah, I didn't read it, but
yeah.
I will.
Yeah, so evidently somebody somehow had magic cards in advance of the release and was sharing them online. I don't know anything. I don't know if it was unintentional, intentional. I don't know how he got it. I know nothing. He could have been completely ignorant of what he was doing was wrong. I don't know. But Pinkerton agents showed up at his house. So all these smaller third-party publishers are being snarky and like, we haven't used, like Troll Lord Games is like Pinkerton free since 1890 and all these like other small. So anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah, so even if they were in the right legally to go send Pinkerton agents to check out these cards or whatever, it's just not a good look right now for them. It's just bad. They are stepping on landmines. They're rolling ones left and right, man. So
they need to purge that company a little.
Something. I don't know what's going on, man. Because they're definitely snatching defeat from the jaws of victory because 5th edition has been their best selling. I mean, D&D, the penetration into the mainstream is huge. 5th edition selling like not just gangbusters, but like super gangbusters on steroids. And then now they're just, I don't know what they're doing. So, so you play, I want to wrap up on this. You play transmogrified home rule versions of Holmes Basic and AD&D First Edition, which is cool. I salute you for that. There's a huge part of me that's basically OSR. Although I'm very system promiscuous. I'll try any system once. I love to see the math and all this stuff. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I love conventions is playing stuff I never get to play. I know you play various, or at least one version of tech. Maybe Swords and Sorcery. There's Techamel that TSR Empire of the Petal Throne released way back. Everyone calls it Techamel, but it's actually Swords and something. It's a modified version of OD&D. So I know you play that. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other systems that you like?
Sorry, let me interrupt. I just play with Victor. So for me,
so you play Victor. You play the Victor rules.
Yeah, I don't care about rules as much as I care about the dungeon master. So if I find a dungeon master who I love, I just stick with them, and they can run whatever they want. I play Boot Hill with Victor, or I'd play anything with Dennis Sustar. I play the dungeon master is the most important, and then the players, and then the rule sets of tertiary importance to me.
Well, see, but in this climate, in this current day and age, you're not supposed to imply that the actual DM or GM is important to the game.
Okay.
How dare you?
I'm old and cranky. That's why.
Yeah, we are. We're yelling at clouds and loving it. So, all right. Well, is there any other dungeon masters, referees, GMs, and or game systems, or novels, or anything that you want? Do you want to give a shout out to before we wrap up this lovely discussion?
Wow. Poke Black Bay Publishing. Try to get Tales of Peril back up. But yes, I'm very, very grateful for Alan for bringing me into the world of the OSR. And
Alan is a cool dude. I can't.
My opinions.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah. You're all cool dudes. I've met so many cool dudes and gals at in the OSR.
Dudes and dudettes.
Very happy.
Yeah,
just very happy to be part of it.
I like to end my. Oh, and I want to say that you've mentioned before. I know that you're into movies and some of the other topics of this show you're into and want to come on and talk about. So we'll have next time I do a movie podcast or something, I'll have you on. So I know like when Levi and I were talking about Grindhouse. Yeah, zombie movies. I just watched...
Maybe with Mike Stewart might do zombies with us too. Might be fun.
Yeah, is he a big zombie movie aficionado?
Yeah, anytime he interviews me or something, afterwards he asks me a zombie question or whatever. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I like Mike a lot. I've had him on, and I'm in his Victorious game in North Texas. But so I just watched again. I'd seen it before, but I watched it again. Zombie by Fulci, which of course has the amazing underwater zombie versus shark scene.
Yes.
And then I watched because Joe Bob just had the most recent episode of Joe Bob. They covered Zombie, and they covered The Beyond, both by Fulci. And they had, I can't remember his name, Fabro Fritchi, I think. I don't know, the musician for the movies was on the show.
Oh, neat.
And then that made me, and that got me, because I'd never seen The Beyond before. And then I went and watched
I think it's pretty good.
It is good. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I think it's other than the zombie versus shark scene, I think that The Beyond and City of the Dead are actually superior to Zombie. But, other people's mileage may vary. But anyway, yeah, so I had a Fulci zombie trifecta.
Nice.
Over the past few days. So yeah, we'll do a zombie movie.
You and the kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my son seemed riveted. He was speechless. He was so into it.
He'll thank you later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll get the therapy bill. No, obviously I don't expose my child to... I see, on Facebook, I belong to some, Joe Bob Facebook group and, movie Facebook groups. And people will brag about taking their little kids to these, intense horror movies. And I don't get that. But that's their, that's their business, not mine. I just don't get it. So, they'll be like, I introduced my 4-year-old to, whatever. I'm like, what do you even
House
doing?
of a Thousand Corpses, yeah.
Yeah, he loved it. Yeah, kids petrified. So anyway, since you mentioned House of a Thousand Corpses, I'm going to go out. I'm just going to say publicly, I do not dislike Rob Zombie's movies. There's this huge hate for Rob Zombie's movies for some reason.
So let's fight.
Well, we're fighting. We're going to have a bare knuckle cage match. He needs to
stick to music. He needs to stick to the heavy death metal.
So what you're saying is multiple editions of D&D have many, many problems, and all of Rob Zombie's movies just have many, many problems. Okay. All right.
Sure,
I haven't seen The Munsters yet. He didn't...
Don't. It's probably terrible.
Probably. Dude, you need to do a stand-up routine of just this deadpan, everything's terrible. It's funny.
Well, what? The interesting thing about The Munsters was the TV show wasn't any good either. So let's just forget The Munsters ever happened.
Dude, you need to do a stand-up routine. You really do. So,
they had a cool car. That was about it for that show.
Yeah, Dragula. Rob Zombie sang a song about it.
That's a good song. I like that song.
It is a good song. Digging ditches and witches, and I don't know what all's going on, but Dragula's involved somehow. So that was Grandpa Munster's drag racer was Dragula instead of Dracula.
Okay.
So, all right. I know you've listened to the show before, so that you know that I always end the show with a bad joke of the week. Even though the podcast isn't weekly, it just has a nice ring to it. So, have you heard about the restaurant on the moon?
I have not.
Great food, no atmosphere.
Oh, thank you.
You're not supposed to thank me. You're supposed to rail at me. You're supposed to say, Shane, that joke has many, many problems.
Okay.
Speaking of zombies.
You've given me a new catchphrase. All right. I now have a new catchphrase thanks to you.
It has many, many, many problems. Okay, here's a zombie bad joke for you. You ready?
Oh, okay. 2 jokes.
Yeah. How do zombies eat computers?
I don't know. 1 bit at a time?
No, close, but they use megabytes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like the moon one better.
Yeah, you like the moon better? All right. Well, I mean, but you're a big zombie person, so I was throwing zombies in there.
Thanks for throwing zombies at me.
No problem. It's one of my favorite things to do. Okay, so I'm going to wrap us up here, folks. Great discussion with Chris Holmes. Cool dude. Saving the world one teenager at a time with D&D.
Aw, you too.
Aw, yeah. Well, I'm just saving the world with my super smell. But you have a superpower where you play D&D with teenagers and middle schoolers. So don't forget, Chris is out there doing his own thing with very cool art. So keep an eye out for that. Don't forget about his father's books. He has a pretty good bibliography going there. Go to HolmesWest.com. Go to HolmesWest.com. Go to ShanePlays.com. There'll be show notes. There's a list of books from John Eric Holmes' personal library that you could potentially purchase if you were so inclined. And don't forget about Things Better Left Alone, or as I like to call it,
yes.
Don't Poke It. The module dropping from Pacesetter Games June 1st. It'll be at North Texas RPG Con or on the Pacesetter Games website. And that is a module with 113 encounters based around a map that John Eric Holmes drew. And John Eric Holmes, of course, is the creator of, or not the creator, the author/editor of Holmes Basic D&D, which came out in 1977. Would you like to add anything to that, Mr. Holmes?
That was great, Shane. No, thank you.
Yep. All right. You know what? I just realized, Mr. Holmes. So from now on, when I'm at a gaming table with you, Chris, I'm going to look over at you and I'm going to say, "The game's afoot, Mr. Holmes."
Quick, get the needle.
I don't get that reference. What?
Oh, sorry. It's a Sherlock Holmes reference.
Is that a Sherlock Holmes reference? I have read a lot of Sherlock Holmes, but I haven't read everything.
Oh, okay. Well, he says it at the end of the Basil Rathbone Hound of the Baskervilles movie, but they edited
the movie
out of some versions. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's a cocaine reference.
Oh, yeah. Because in the books back in the day, cocaine wasn't viewed with such public hate or whatever. And in the books, in the novel, the short stories and stuff, Mr. Holmes liked his bit of cocaine, did Holmes. So,
well, he hated boredom.
Yeah, well, that's the reason he saw people. He wasn't necessarily a good guy. He wasn't a bad guy, but he wasn't necessarily a good guy. He was bored, which is why he liked to solve the mysteries.
Sounds like we need to do another podcast.
We really do. Yeah, he would, if he didn't have a mystery to solve, like he would sit in his apartment and fire a revolver at the walls. I mean, he would go nuts. So, anyway. And he never wore the deerstalker cap. That's like a hunting cap. But somehow, I think because of the movies, it became associated with him. So, anyway. All right, Chris, it's been great. Thanks so much for coming on. We will have you on again. We'll talk about zombies and other good stuff. And in the meantime,
yay!
Good luck with all your various endeavors. And I look forward to seeing Things Better Left Alone and your art.
Yeah, me too.
All right, man. Everybody else, we will catch you next time on Shane Plays. Thanks so much for listening to Shane Plays Geek Talk. I certainly hope you enjoyed this journey into the things we love. For your convenience, show notes with helpful links for each episode can always be found at shaneplays.com. You can catch the podcast in several places, including on the blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, Amazon Music, Verbal, YouTube, and more. If you like what you hear and would like to support Shane Plays Geek Talk, you can do so for as little as $1 per episode on Patreon at patreon.com/ShanePlays. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Stay geeky, my friends.